Easy Troop. So today's video comes from a very simple question of when I start putting loads of different instruments in and I want to build everything up in a track, it starts to get muddy and confusing and it's really hard to mix. We're going to look at one of my old tracks, by the way, that was released with the channel sponsor, which is DistroKid. So if you want to release your music to all of the major streaming and download platforms, check out the link below for a discount off of your first year of unlimited distribution, and you can distribute your track just like this one. So I'm going to show you an example today with a Liquid D&B track that's got lots of channels. I've mixed them down and bounced a couple out, so it's not an overwhelming project. That it's still come out to like 40 channels, look, and that's with the vocals bounced together, and that's with the drum break mostly bounced together. I added some shakers and another snare layer, but the point being there's still lots of layers in there, and especially we're going to look at the strings here so I can show this example. I've taken all the plugins off of them. And just another quick thing, this is the mix track, so if you listen to the master it will sound a little bit different, but I have just bashed a limiter on just for the purpose of if we do anything in the tutorial I don't want it to pop and blow anyone's ears out, know what I mean? So that's the only reason that is there on the master, but otherwise let's roll and get into this. So here's the little section I'm going to use as an example.
Hearts are empty, and now I'm ready to give my heart to someone else now.
Right, and let's just go over everything that is in that particular section. So we've got the break, which is that's mixed and bounced together. And then I ended up adding an extra snare layer in this because I wanted that cluck, cluck, right? There's then a tambourine loop on top of that. I've then got bass and subline. Then we've got the strings that I was talking about. There's a lot going on with them, right? And then we've got the end of this pad fading out, whatever pad I made there. You can just hear that filling in a little bit of space. And then these, where it's called the viola stack, that is another synth, another one. That's the lead, violin pad, another pad, cymbal, and the vocals. And that's, I think, two or three channels combined in once I got the balance right and I liked it as it was. Bounce it down, condense it, it's sorted, right? So 14 channels altogether, and that's a break which was already maybe like 6 or 7 different sounds, but they're all staggered, so there's no big issue there. And then the vocal, which is condensed and takes up a lot of space, right? However, everything's pretty well balanced, right? You can hear every individual element. As I brought it in there as well, you could hear each thing pop up as long as I did it in time. This pad, for example, really fades out, but it's there right at the start and you could hear that come in. And once you've heard it, so that's the very first thing I want to talk about. As you heard there, as I dropped each element in, you could hear it, which means there was space for it. Nothing's necessarily overlapping apart from the example we're going to look at. What I mean here is, right, let's take all the drums, for example. And there's technically a cymbal down here, but I put that in like extras. Right, that covers like the full spectrum of sound, right? If we open up tonal balance right here, we've got low end, we've got high end, the mids are kind of lacking. We've got middle space in there, but there's this high end, you can hear it on all the shakers and the top of the snare, and you've got your kick drum down here as well. But there's still space. You can see in my overall balance here, I've definitely got space in the absolute subs. I've got space here up in the like lower mids, the like 300 range. So when we bring the bass and subline in, it's filling in those spaces. And obviously the tail as old as time of the bass and the kick fighting each other, that's balanced out a little bit as well. If we go onto the bass itself, we've got Neutron here. Tell how old this track is, Neutron 2. We can close that away. And we've got a bit of work going on here, probably with the compressor. Look, it's taking out like a decibel, if that, from the bass each time. They're sitting there, they fit well together. There's space for them. If we look at this like curve here, I've still got all of this mid-range up here that I can make space with. Interestingly, look, the way that's carved out, that is kind of the vocal range of things, right? Easily hear all of those elements now, and you can see in the tone of balance here, it starts to fill out a bit more with that. All of that sits in that range, which is why it's nice and clear the whole time. There are fundamental elements. We can hear everything, it all sits well, they've all got their own space in the mix. If you look at my tonal balance, apart from this extreme high end in here, I don't know if I mixed to this curve, by the way, which is what it is. It all sits and fits in that space, right? Now all this other stuff, all of this has now got to occupy a space that's already filled with our key elements, our drums, bass and the vocal in this instance. All of this has got to fit in that range look. It's right in those mids with the vocal and everything else. So what do we do about that so that the overall balance ends up like this? And we can still hear it all. First thing is, the vocal's louder than all of it, so it always cuts through, and it means in those moments when the vocal dips a little bit, we can still hear the vocal, we can still perceive what's going on, but it allows everything to shine through. You listen to that, you'll notice it a bit more. Right? Vocal comes through a little bit louder, you really pick it up with the ear. It's not too loud, it's loud enough that you hear it nicely. The dips out, it feels like all those elements swell up because they're in that same sort of space. And that's just a case of notation and placing of the music and having your vocal as the priority. If we didn't want the vocal to be the priority, we'd dip it down a bit in the mix and all of the instrumentation would start to overwhelm it. Now we can't pick the vocal out as much. If we focus on it, we can hear it. All the instrumentation takes precedent, right? So we bring it back up to where it was, minus 4.5 in this case. But we can still pick the lead and all the strings out. Let me show you something else that's going on. So like I said, I took all of the effects off of these strings here. They're naked, if you will, at the minute. One's coming from Play, it's Goliath. It is the cellos, Maricato, Round Robin. And the other one, I think, is Session Strings. What are we? Preset 1920s with the key switch mode on spiccato. Cool, happy days. So I'm just going to bash an EQ on both of these. I can do that by going boop and boop, and we'll just use the stock Logic one. Let's play those back. So again, they're right in that mid-range, and those two, they're even kind of fighting each other, right? They're the similar chords right over in the same space. If we look at like 400, for example, here and here, we've got loads of energy in both. Bring that right up and bring that right up. Shows a pretty nasty frequency there. But you get my point, they're both right in around that range. They've got loads of energy there, there's loads of sound there. They should be fighting each other, but they work quite well together. They harmonise with each other. They're string instruments, they're using the same chords, slightly different sounds. It's another thing that works, so we've chosen two sounds that work together and they don't fight each other, they reinforce one another. The other thing is there seems to be no low end on both of these, right, in this instance. And there's not all that much high end either. And that's something that we can look at. So one thing I would say, right, does this at 100 Hertz give us any benefit? What we can do is take this, roll it down. I will jack this up in editing in case it's really low for you, but I'm going to crank it up here. I don't think that would benefit the track whatsoever. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that element out, right, after we've isolated it. And I'll just do it with a little fade like this. And we'll figure out, does it take away from the sound at all itself? It is a little thinner. But here's the thing. In context of the track, And the answer is no at the end of the day. So we've isolated that out a little bit more. Now the other thing is, there actually is loads of high end even though we can't see it. Yeah, it's all up there. However, it's super, super low. Is that necessarily bringing anything into the track? And the answer is probably no. And I'd end up doing something like this, but giving this little bump up here. So we're like accenting the most interesting high-end bit and getting rid of everything else up here that we don't really need. One of the reasons that we would do that is, let's have a look at the vocal, for example, the thing that we want to be really prominent and stick out all the time and be able to shine. If we open our, what do we got on here? The vocal has got loads of information up here. I don't need that to be fighting with anything that's not bringing the benefit into the track. In this instance, I would take high end away. And I'll probably do that on both of these string tracks. And I would do it to highlight the fact that that vocal can really then push through. The main focus of these strings is still getting this job done. And we'll do a similar thing here. I'd obviously check the low end, but I know a principle because this track was already mixed and released years ago. This is what we did. We end up rolling them off like that. So we've taken that high end away, and now the vocal has more room to shine. There's not a bunch of extra high end going, ha 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 ha, overtaking that. How much of a difference does this make though? Let's take both of these EQs and turn them off. Listen to everything in context. I'm going to bring those EQs in and it's going to take that little bit high end away. Listen to the shining top end of the vocal.
Hearts are empty, but now I'm ready to give my heart to someone else now. Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up from hitting the ground. Hearts are empty, but now
I was going to say that's pretty subtle, but it's not really that subtle. We're bumping up the sort of highest important range of those string sounds and taking everything else away. I can hear a massive difference in that the strings pop through a little bit more, but they have no effect on the vocal like attention whatsoever.
Hearts are empty, but now I'm ready to give my heart to someone else now. Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady. Going up from hitting the ground.
Now that doesn't just affect the overall vocal, that's just one part of the example. You've got to think about it as a whole. Mixing, you're making 10,000 tiny adjustments like we just did to get the end result. But it also allows things like the lead to shine in that space that it has as well. If we look at the lead, analyzer on, that has got loads and loads of high end. In fact, I've even boosted it up here at 6K. The lead though is a little bit different because the lead runs along with the vocal.
Hearts are empty, but now I'm ready to give my
We actually want that high end because it helps reinforce the overall story that's going on with the
hearts
vocal.
are empty, but now I'm ready to give my heart to
Taking it away,
someone else.
actually the track just feels a little bit empty now. It's just in there filling in that space. So we've given that lead the ability to shine a bit more, as well as the vocal, reinforcing one another. And that's the thing that I want you to think about in your production when things are getting too busy and too muddied up. What things are working together? Does that high end, that low end, those other bits actually need to be there? Do they reinforce one another? Because if we were to start looking at on the lead here and taking out the same process, you know, let's say we get rid of all that high end.
Hearts are empty, but now I'm ready to give my
I mean, it's
heart to
okay,
someone else now.
but it's much better like that.
Feeling heavy,
And we've given it that extra space by taking away that sound that was there with the strings that gave no benefit whatsoever. So it's that weighing and balance. It feels like everything's there all the time.
I'm ready.
It feels like the strings have all their high end because your brain hears the strings and it puts it in there for you for the most part. It can't separate all these different frequencies at once, but it knows what strings to sound like. And that is my thing for this video. Have a real think about all those different elements. Do they need to be there? Do they bring benefit? Do they harmonize with one another? Or are they a conflicting element? And can you take that part away and still have it feel like the strings in this example, that everything is still there and in that place? I really hope the video has been helpful for you and given you some ideas for your mixing and how you can apply it. If you want to have a listen to this full track, by the way, I will link that in the description below.